A Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski, starring Emily Blunt. A Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski, starring Emily Blunt and John Krasinski and a bunch of other kids. A Quiet Place, starring Jim from The Office and Emily Blunt and some other kids in the new action horror sci-fi movie, silent film. Tony, you rated this a perfect 10 out of 10. You really liked A Quiet Place.
I loved A Quiet Place, and I think a lot of everyone loved A Quiet Place, and for good reason. It is a real fresh take on horror, and I'm just blown away by what they're able to do with a film that has like maybe 5 lines of dialogue and just a extremely interesting premise that's executed perfectly to a T. I have no bad things to say whatsoever about this movie.
And first and foremost, this is a complete spoiler warning of the movie. You want to go see this movie, please go do that before watching this review. And if you want to see a really great non-spoiler review, you can see it right here. That's Rad Entertainment's non-spoiler review of A Quiet Place. But, this is your last warning. We're going to spoil the shit out of this movie. So it takes place in modern day time. I think later on they go back to a site and there's the only kind of time date that we can see. It's 2006, I believe. The movie follows a family of, like I said, John Krasinski, Emily Blunt, and their 3 children. It starts out with them in a grocery store. It looks like the eldest boy is hurt or is sick or something. They're getting some kind of medicine. It's kind of like a post-apocalyptic setting. There are creatures running amok, and if you make any kind of sound, that's it. That's lights out. That's curtains for you, as shown. Unfortunately, we get to see this happen to the youngest of the family. This was a pretty brutal scene. What do you think about it?
Right off the bat, starts out with his eldest son being sick, and I love that we don't get any real answers or why this, and I love it. Like, the opening of this movie is kind of like the third act, and then their youngest son dies, and that could be easily the third act of any other movie, and that's how we open up with this story. And seeing the youngest son be taken out right in that opening act, or that opening scene, just set the stakes for the film. It makes you go, okay, people can die in this world. We're not going to just like keep this family safe. Like, this writing it's going to get dark, and this family's going to have to deal with some stuff. And so right then, in that moment when he's running down the train tracks, trying to save his son, and that thing just comes out of nowhere, I love it. I loved it so much. You can see him seeing it in the distance as it's running through the woods. Like, it just took my breath away, literally, because it's so quiet in those opening moments. You're hearing your own heartbeat, and you're holding your breath the whole time because you don't want to miss a beat of the movie, and it's just brilliant. I actually thought the movie had made a mistake the way the audio is, because whenever it's from the perspective of his daughter who is deaf, there is no audio at all. It's completely silent. And then when it switches perspective to one of the other kids, it's like the youngest boy, when they're in the little talk about the rocket, from his perspective, you hear like a refrigerator noise in the background. Like, you have to hear just the like ambiance of the room, or it's just completely silent again. And I thought that was an editing mistake at first, because I hear that a lot in like independent filmmaking, where there's they record 2 different audios and then it's just jarring. And that's what I thought it was. I was like, oh no, right off the bat you got this big editing mistake, and then you realize she's deaf, and it makes total sense, and it's great, and it's just really, really, really beautiful sound design.
Little bit of research I did about this movie before I saw it, and I, like I said, I did watch your review on it, but I knew a little bit about it. I knew it was going to be a quiet thriller, but it makes you think, like, can they maintain tension throughout the film? Because it's, all intents and purposes, it's kind of a silent film, and to see something this ambitious coming from a person that's known for his comedy, and I know John Krasinski's done some things lately, drama pieces. He did that war movie with Michael Bay, which is crazy that, we just, before we started recording this, we found out that Michael Bay was the producer on this, which just makes, you even more mad when this guy doesn't try. To maintain that level of tension throughout the thing. I've never sat so close to a screen before, like literally physically on the edge of my seat. And movies like this, jump scares are just kind of the cheap thing to do. But that's what this movie kind of thrives on that. And I'm not saying it has jump scares, because like you said, even at that beginning scene where the youngest child it kind of gets snatched up, it's completely silent. And then there's that big noise. It's completely relevant to have these. It's like doing jump scares without having them be jump scares. It's not just a loud, music noise. It is it's actual things happening, and just the tension living in that kind of a world of, I constantly am tripping on everything, and it's like these kids are knocking stuff over, or the wife's knocking stuff over. Imagine living, putting yourself in that situation.
This is the world that you have to live in now if you want to survive, and I don't think that I could. I think that I'm a clumsy person, and I think my dog would go out right off the bat, and I'd go out hollering her name.
It kind of had similar notes as a movie like Signs. It almost felt a little bit Shyamalan at times. Did you feel the same way about that?
Not really, but now that you mention it, I can definitely see that. I definitely got like Alien vibes, like the first Alien film. Even though this movie wasn't necessarily a claustrophobic thriller, it had those moments that were very claustrophobic, like with her in the bathtub and her trapped downstairs and stepping on that nail and all that stuff. Like all that felt to me very Alien-esque. So I really love that. Even the idea of being silent, because in Alien, they use the little radar detector to sense that the alien's coming, and it felt. Those are the vibes that I got. I got more Alien, but now that you mentioned Shyamalan, I could definitely feel that in there too.
There's even that moment where he's taking the son out to fish, and then they kind of stumble upon that other house with the older family, and it showed that the woman, the old farmer lady, was kind of ripped up, and just at that time, of course, our main protagonist and his son are walking up, and then he sees this older man, and immediately he knows that this guy just lost everything. He has nothing to live for. But without saying anything, that was the kind of the brilliance of this movie. Is he makes it. There's so much said without saying it in this movie.
That's what this movie does excellently. Is it shows, it doesn't tell. And that's one of my biggest beefs with modern cinema, is that they explain to you what's going on too much, and it's just full of exposition, and they basically tell you what they're feeling. They don't show you how they feel, and this is a perfect example of how to do something like that correctly. Like in that moment with that old man, what's going to happen. Right off the bat, and there's nothing in that scene that they don't need to explain to you what's going to happen. Like, you just know, like, oh man, this guy's about to scream and die. Like, you just know that he's about to commit suicide, and it's terrifying. It's seriously terrifying, and I haven't actually felt like that kind of tension in a movie in a really long time. I'm usually most of the time disappointed with the horror genre, and that's one of the reasons why I don't consider it to be one of my favorite genres, is because most of the time it's just kind of cookie cutter. But this is one of the ones that stand out, able to, actually surprise me as a viewer, and I just loved it.
It was completely lean. It was a quick 90 minutes. And I think that's perfect. How engrossed I was watching it for the full 90 minutes. I think if it was 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes longer, it might have kind of lost its steam a little bit. So that good on him for directing, a project like this that it was that ambitious, and paced it perfectly as well. Let's talk about creature design. These things kind of look like a mix between the xenomorph, the neomorph, and like the liquor from Resident Evil.
You got to throw Demogorgon in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was pretty cool looking. They showed it as much as they should have. They showed a lot of restraint too. They didn't have it overly featured, but they did feature it quite a bit. I think they featured it more than I thought they were.
I totally agree. I think that they featured it just enough, because that's one of my biggest beefs with horror movies too, is showing the monster or creature or whatever it is too early on, and then you're no longer scared of it. I think you have to keep that element of surprise and like, what is it exactly? in the shadows, just so that way your own imagination can kind of take over, and you can scare yourself by just trying to figure out what it is. And I love that in the opening scene of the movie, you see it full force, like you see it lit up right in daylight. But it happens so fast that your brain is still trying to figure out exactly what it saw. So when you get the real reveals, towards the end of the film, with the real, and you start to really learn it's the way that it's blind, but it can hear, and how it's got like just kind of like a ton of ears, and like I love the way that it looks, but I love the way that they showed its biology without having to explain it. It's just all. Just they show it to you. It's great.
Yeah, and just a like complete comparison to movies that just came out almost in the same week. You take a movie like a Ready Player One, where the first 20 minutes is exposition, just voiceover, and then this is you learn everything you need to learn by, like you said, close-ups of the creature. Seeing its little weird eardrum. You see just enough clippings, newspaper clippings, kind of laying around his desk, and that's all you needed. And that's. A lot of movies nowadays are just over expositioning everything to death. They're completely spelling it out for the audience. This kind of respected its audience, which is a breath of fresh air, in my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't treat the audience like they're dumb, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves in film, is that I hate when movies treat me like an idiot, like kind of what anime does, where anime just kind of like repeats over and over and over, like plot points, and you're like, I get it, just move on, please. Death Note's one of my favorite animes, but they explain every single detail of what they're doing all the time, and it drives me insane. It's like, I understand what you're doing. You don't have to explain to me that you're writing this dude's name down and he's gonna die. Like, I get it. I got it off the first time you did it. You don't have to explain it to me every single time you do it.
Let's talk about a couple things, and you might not feel the same way, because you gave this thing a perfect 10 out of 10. I didn't think it was a perfect movie. I wouldn't say it was a 10 out of 10 or a 5 out of 5 if we're rating it on here. But just it felt a little bit MacGuffin-y to me. It seemed like it was just like a perfect shitstorm of things that kept happening. It got a little movie towards the big buildup, and I understand that we need conflict, but I mean the whole world is conflict, right? If like you sneeze or you fart, you're done. But it's just like she steps on the thing, she drops the picture, and then this happens and this happens. It did feel a little bit TV to me, and then out of nowhere, at the same time that all this is happening, she's having a baby. This stuff was fine. It just felt like he was trying to figure out a way to kind of move things along and wrap them up to me.
I can't disagree with that, but I think that's just maybe a difference in taste, because I love all that. I think that that's the best way to shoot. The best way to reaction is you write an action and then there's a reaction, and based off that reaction there's another action. So it's just action reaction. Like, that's what makes a good action sequence or chase sequence, or in this case like a thrilling sequence. And the reason why it works for me is that they set up that moment. They set up the whole, you got to make a louder noise. Like, you can make noise as long as there's a louder noise to distract it. They set up that waterfall sequence so that way when she's in the water, she ducks underneath, the baby's crying. Like, they set up all these perfect moments earlier on in the film to then turn around and execute them when shit hits the fan. And when shit hits the fan in the movie, it doesn't let up. As soon as that first moment, they knock over that lantern when they're playing that game, from then on out, it's a thrilling chase sequence almost. And it's just action reaction all the way up to the end, to the point of it's exhausting. It really is. Like, it is exhausting for the viewer, but watching that in a theater full of people who all had their hands covering their faces and were absolutely terrified, and everybody's completely silent, and it's like you could hear a pin drop in the theater. It was amazing. I mean, that's a good movie that puts everybody on the edge of their seat and keeps a bunch of high school girls from talking and pulling out their phone. Amazing.
An asshole checker as far as a movie going experience goes. Movie going nowadays is, like you said, it's a bunch of teenagers shoving their face with porn loudly, babies crying, cell phones ringing, everyone's tweeting instead of watching the screen. But this one, it almost was like it turned the audience into these creatures, right? It's like that person that made the noise, immediately everyone looked at, because everything stood out so much. which was pretty funny. So, you know, if you have that loud friend, leave them home. Don't bring them to see A Quiet Place, because they basically will get murdered for the rest of the audience, because it is so. And that's another thing that I want to say about John Krasinski being a filmmaker. Like, he gained that much respect from his audience that people are giving this reaction. People are respecting the film so much. The last thing the bad thing I want to say, and like I said, this is full spoiler review, literally the last 10 seconds of the film, you know, the creature finds its way back in to the basement where all the radio equipment is. The daughter, you know, figures out that her earpiece is the thing that's kind of driving them away, and then she puts it on the amplifier or the microphone, and that's what kind of freaks it out and allows Emily Blunt's character to ultimately shoot it in the face with the shotgun. All the newspaper clippings and everything said that they're basically indestructible. No one could find the weakness, so to speak. I had to suspend my disbelief quite a bit for that, because I feel like someone somewhere would have figured this out, or at least, you know, played loud things, because it looks like that's not only how these creatures hunt, but loud noises are what kills them, essentially. And then at the ending scene, you see all of them kind of rush the house. It ends on a shotgun click, like a Men in Black or something. And at that point, it turned into like a weird action movie for 2 seconds. Maybe a different ending scene for me would have been better. And I get the, you know, using the thing and seeing all the monsters go down there, and that's fine. I thought that was cool. I just thought that it was a little cheesy, ending it on a shotgun cock.
I kind of agree it's a little cheesy ending on a shotgun cock, but I like the idea that they ended it there, because they could have just turned it into an action movie and shown them just blowing away the remaining 2 that were left. But I like the idea that they didn't, just because it left it a little bit open, like, okay, did they survive? Didn't they survive? But also, we didn't have to end it on an action sequence. We were able to, you were able to keep it still within that realm of like thriller horror without having to turn it into an action movie. So I like that they didn't go full on action with it. I think that at that point in the movie, that maybe is kind of the weakest moment of the film. But at that point, you're so invested in the characters and the story that you can just, you know, your belief, you're in that world now. Like, so you can suspend disbelief and let it be. I do agree that, you know, it's maybe a little hard to believe that nobody figured that out earlier on. But at the same time, if these things are such excellent killing machines, maybe there wasn't time. Like, we don't know from the point of their arrival to the point of like humanity being wiped out. Like, that could have been like a day, a week. Like, we don't know. You know what I mean? It could have been so fast that nobody was able to figure it out. But that's one of the big things. Like, you know, I think we're kind of coming to a close here on this thing, but one of the biggest reasons why I love the movie so much is because we don't know where they are. We don't know where they're from. We don't know if they're aliens. We don't know if they're monsters from underground. We don't know what they are. Like, and that's what I love about it. Is this kind of a world that you would want to see a continuation of, or just kind of let it be its own thing? No, I don't want to see anymore. Not at all. And that's not because the world could be explored, because I think it definitely could, but I just think that this movie is perfect, and just don't fucking touch it. But I hate it.
Michael Bay did produce it, so we will get 8 sequels.
Oh, for sure. I really believe that there'll be a sequel. I really do. I just don't want to see it. Can we jump into this movie? Made $54 million opening weekend.
Wow.
With a $17 million budget, and most of that budget was probably in creature design. That's amazing. That's great. I mean, I know that this is going to get a lot of comparison probably to Get Out. Just two guys completely known for comedy turning around and doing a horror movie. Get Out was made for $4.5 million, so significantly less budget. But you know, I think that if had A Quiet Place not had amazing creatures, they probably would have had about a similar budget. But $4.5 million and made $33 million opening weekend. So both did extremely well, and that's what we need to take away from this, is that when you have a really great story, people will talk about it and people will go to the theater to see it. Like, this movie's marketing wasn't necessarily the greatest marketing. They put out a couple of trailers. I only watched one of them because the one trailer sold me so hard I didn't need to see anymore. So they didn't push this marketing too heavy. They allowed word of mouth to be what drove people to the theater. And I think With big giant blockbusters that are happening right now, I think a take home of $37 million opening weekend on a $17 million movie, I think that's pretty amazing. So I applaud everything about this film. That we need to see more movies like this, more movies that cost less than $20 million to make, because the turnaround is just awesome.
And the last thing I want to applaud about it is that there was a lot of talks that this was going to be connected to the Cloverfield franchise. Thank you for not doing that, because as a standalone movie, and I completely agree with you, this is it, and that's fine. I would not like to see any more. I thought they ended it to, in a place where you actually get to chew on it for a little bit, unlike a lot of other movies out there. So for me, like I said, it wasn't a perfect movie, but it was damn entertaining, edge of my seat kind of thing. And I these horror thrillers usually aren't like the biggest cup of tea of mine, but I did enjoy this one quite a bit. I do out of 5 on this show. I'm going to give it a 4.7 out of 5. Near perfect movie, just a couple of faux pas that, just nitpicky things that took me out of it a little bit, but for the most part, damn good job. I would love to see not a continuation of the story, but more stuff from Jim from The Office. So you rate this a 10 out of 10 on your channel. Are you sticking with that, or now that you kind of sat around and thought about it for a little bit, did it lose any steam for you?
No, I'm hoping to get back to the theater to watch this one more time, at least while it's in theaters. I don't do that with a lot of movies, but yeah, I'm sticking with it. 10 out of 5.
Ladies and gentlemen, what did you think about A Quiet Place? Thanks for joining us for our spoiler review. Be sure to subscribe to They Said We Said and to Rad Entertainment to talk to us about what you thought about this film. Like, comment, do all the sharing, all the YouTube things, and we'll see you next time for another movie review.